My name is Mark Williams. Obviously been campaigning for parents for over 11 years now, whatever it is. And I'm mostly known for fathers, and coming from a lived experience of since I've undiagnosed disorders like ADHD, ASD, bipolar, undiagnosed, schizophrenia. It could be a lot of mental health disorders before they become parents as well. And certainly back then, there was no pathway. Certainly, it's, even today, when you think that there's no mention of NICE guidelines of fathers, CG1 and 2 NICE guidelines. So basically, yeah, it's just today's change. I think we are talking about mental health, more today, thankfully. But certainly back when I was a new dad, there was no support whatsoever. There was no understanding that fathers can feel like that too, like mums.
So I guess, do you think men are more open now about the mental health than in previous years? I think it's something that still needs to be discussed more. Yeah,
definitely. I think it is on the way forward. I think it's a big myth that men don't talk. The groups I run, when you get one dad to open up and the other dad opens up, they do talk a lot. It's like a big genie bottle. They all come out because so there's a big myth. Men do talk in a right safe place with people around them who got empathy, understanding as well, and people who understand it better. So, but yeah, when we got the biggest killer men under 45 being suicide, and actually high risk of suicide in the perinatal period with dads, because dads often don't get screened and assessed, and they go into other services years later or after the postnatal period. We still got a long way to go, really. But yeah, it's a case of man up, get on with it, don't show weakness, all those things that we've learned off perhaps our own parents or society in itself. So it's going forward. I think men are talking more about their mental health.
So myself and Becky, we're both student nurses. What do you think as nurses and student nurses we can do to recognize the signs of postnatal depression in fathers, and how can we broach the subject if it's not something they're coming forward and talking about?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's just have a conversation, really. I think it was a 5-minute conversation that opened up myself to express my own concerns as being a new dad. I was a couple of years after my son was born, speaking to somebody else who understood it, and I think the thing with post-depression fathers, there's an overlap between the birth trauma as well, fathers PTSD. So fathers are witnessing traumatic birth. Loads of factors come into that, and those symptoms do overlap into the postnatal period. So we got to talk about what was the birth experience like for you as a dad. What was the communication like as a new dad, and also postnatal depression on its own. Because as we know, 1 in 10 dads actually suffer from postnatal depression, but we know it's far higher because it was 1 in 10 for years for mums. When we start screening and assessing dads better, then we'll know it's far higher as well. So some of the signs to look out for is personality changes, and actually communicate with their partners. Was your husband overworking? Was he drinking more since the pregnancy or since the baby's been born? Was he how was he engaging? Do you think he's the bond, the attachment and bond encouraged, those sorts of things, really? So it could be a range of reasons why fathers can struggle during the postnatal period. So as a health professional, have a conversation, because I guarantee he will always remember you for that, because he probably other members, even his family, haven't asked, how are you doing as a dad?
So what do you think, Mark, when we think about the visits that we do as, say, health visitors, or when midwives are coming? Dad's not always there, the partner's not always there, the dad, the stepdad, or whatever that situation, that male role that is in that household. Often the time you just see mum, and dad's not there. Do you think that we need to encourage dads to come more to the appointments? Obviously, that some will come to, say, a booking appointment or the first scan, but they're not often there for that postnatal period. They're either back at work or supporting the family in other ways, or they don't do the appointment because it's not expected for the dad to be there, the social norm. So how can we...
From your own personal experience, do you think becoming a father helped change, I guess, some preconceptions you had about mental health? Or do you think you've helped you understand it a bit more now you're a father and you've gone through that process?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's helped me and my wife, because I was so uneducated about mental health, 2004. And unless when you go for that, journey, as in when your wife got severe postnatal depression. Michelle was in crisis teams, all sorts of things, and you expect to be back in work in 2 weeks, and I was home for 6 months, no money coming in, mortgage to pay, all that stuff. Obviously, that obviously had a massive impact on my mental health in general. I think looking back at that time, certainly, it was, the stigma was far worse than it is today. How can dads get, what's dad's gonna be depressed about? He didn't give birth to the baby, all this sort of thing. And that was certainly, it wasn't talked about with dads, but mums, I should say. You just had a new baby, you should be happy with all sorts of things. So I think it's a generation shift, and thanks to students now that they're the next ones to push it forward to have these conversations as well. I think anyone can struggle. When you think of the signs and symptoms of postnatal depression in mums, have a think, is it one that dads can't experience either? Guilt, bonding, especially attachment, obviously, overwhelmed, thoughts of suicide, guilt, not good enough. Of course, dads worry about social services. All these thoughts and feelings mums get when associated with postnatal depression, of course, that can happen to dads. There's always been a myth about hormones was a big factor with postnatal depression. You ask any professor or doctor in perinatal mental health, there's no really strong evidence that is the case. And if you want to put that into place, testosterone actually lowers during this time in fatherhood as well. So by engaging the father with skin to skin, which releases oxytocin, which is good for dad and the baby massage, what happens, that shifts the dopamine. Dad's now rewarded, he's really engaged, and that will help dad with his mental health as well, even better. So we need to educate fathers about the importance of skin to skin as well, and I've been in tune with the baby, all the things we know about for mums.
So if we were to, for example, Lucy was off to do a visit as a health visitor to a mum and a dad with a new baby, and dad opened up to Lucy that he was struggling bonding with baby and he was finding it difficult. As a man and somebody who's been there, Mark, what could you give Lucy as advice to help in that scenario? Obviously, she's got her kind of standard stuff that we all learn, but what would really help, like from first-hand experience?
I think firsthand is the importance of the skin to skin and the attachment bond. That's one thing, and there's loads of resources out there now. It's like Best Beginnings. I've got a really good app where they got videos on there. It's about educating the father as well, and break down the myths as well, why he won't get that support. So a lot of fathers say, "Oh, I'm fine." We need to ask the second question: "Are you really fine?" And also then have some sort of pathway for yourself if you're comfortable. Look in local services. Fathers will be screened now and assessed for their mental health only if mum has got postnatal depression or in specialist services. That's NHS England long-term plan. So things are changing, shifting. But like you said, we got Hub of Hope, which is the database. You put your postcode in, and it tells what local services are actually in the area, like Andy Mann's Club. So, you might get, there's dads groups out there as well, but obviously when it comes to mental health, you've got to be choosy where, you wouldn't, like certain dads groups have no awareness about mental health, they're just there to form a group together. So, NHS mental health helplines, the national services, and then you got IAP services as well, IAP services are there for fathers as well, talking therapies. So we can range a range of services you can create, so you feel confident when you do go into visits, you're prepared really as well. And videos, there's videos like you can share that other fathers have gone through experiences. Oh yeah, I can relate to that, because sometimes, especially the mild end, another father acknowledging there's another father going through those thoughts and feelings, sometimes you won't see him again. But what happens is they start overthinking, and then it ends up sometimes in crisis teams, and then the relationship breaks down, because that's what happens if you don't support the both parents. One is struggling with the mental health, one isn't. Obviously that can impact on each other's relationship on itself.
Definitely. Lucy, have you got some more questions?
So would you be able to tell us more about like the How Are You Dad campaign, like what involved in that?
Yeah, just an idea. That's a good thing I have an ADHD. I have all these different ideas. Same as International Father's Mental Health Day, that was an idea. But it's just an hashtag. So basically on social media, rather than get lost, you can Google or put the hashtag in "How are you, Dad?" and there's a library of information there, research, blogs, loads of resources I put up every time. I'm working with Dr. Annie Mayers, who does more research in birth trauma as well. We work together for to get this out there really as well. But there's a lot of fathers who have joined the campaign as well now in recent years. Like Scott Mayer, Father 7. I got Helen Birch, who lost her partner through suicide when she was pregnant. This is not just impact on dads' mental health; it's actually impact on mums and the families as well if you don't include dads.
So I guess like with this campaign and like all the other campaigns, do you think these help like make a difference to like men's mental health?
The campaign itself, yeah, it's been hard over the years. People, campaigning to politicians and commissioners. I think when we changed the long-term plan, me and Andy had some, we had to share the evidence and explain why it is important. But this research has been out, 1991. They said first-time fathers are more prone to depression. This is over 30, 40 years, and more, where we known the fathers could struggle during this time. But I think it comes down to a lot with the money side of it as well, if I'm being honest as well, because when you start changing policies, you've got to put that service in place as well. So, and extra staff, but early prevention every pound you put in, we will save £9 plus. That's where I look at it. So we need more health visitors, more midwives. We need more early years practitioners. We need more services because, like I mentioned, what's happening is a lot of the mental health services will get stretched after the postnatal period and not get picked up. Amen.
So I think we wanted to ask you a few questions, maybe thinking about men that might have babies that, in the NICU or things like that. So, or with long-term complex health conditions, or they might just have like a bout of jaundice that's like the parents never anticipated that they might end up back in a couple of days later in a hospital with this scary situation where obviously it's not uncommon, and obviously normally baby's okay and has a bit of a sunbathe and comes back out, but for a first-time parent that can be traumatic. So thinking about Lucy again as the nurse, what could we do to help dads in that situation where they might be fretting, and obviously mum's just had a baby, things like that?
Yeah, that's the thing with mental health. It's so complex, isn't it? It's so complex. So it could be a range of reasons. Obviously that experience didn't happen to me with the neonate wards. But obviously, some of the fathers I've spoken to have gone through miscarriages with their partners, obviously, and never been supported. And then obviously another baby comes along. The antenatal anxiety is higher in that father then because now he's worried it's going to happen again. Those sorts of things. So, it's so complex, mental health, as but even if you've got a dad on the ASD spectrum, ASD, how we communicate and how we put that information across to that dad may be different to somebody who haven't got ASD as well. Even over sensory overload and baby crying, of course, if you're not used to noise and sounds and too much gets overwhelming, obviously that can play out as well in the father in doing things he wouldn't have done as well. So we've got to start looking at more person-centered approach, really, rather than thinking every father's the same, because every father's got a different needs, like mothers as well, and address those needs as well. So going back to your question, really, it's really just be more person-centered, find out what works for him, and then address that need for that. And it could be as simple as, how are you, Dad? How are you getting on? How are you coping? At least he feels acknowledged and he's part of that transition in parenthood as well.